Hey, this is ASpengler coming to show you guys a tutorial video, something new that I haven't done before, but some people have been asking for like decal tutorials, and I figured you guys would probably want a painting tutorial, so that's what this is. Just kind of an idea I've had. Maybe do some like tree tutorials in the future, maybe some more painting tutorials. Definitely get a decal tutorial out to you guys, and then I guess whenever another thing comes into my mind that I think you guys would want to see. So that's basically what this is. I'll probably be posting them on Wednesdays, as I usually post my weekly Castle segments on Sundays, so just to give you something in the middle of the week. So with that, I'll get right into it. So what you see right here are some of the things, or guns, Brickarms, that I have already painted. There's the word. The first ones that I worked with, started painting, were these M1 Grands. Put it up against the white. So these are the first ones that I painted, and they turned out like really good, way better than I was expecting. So that's the M1 Grand. So I went ahead, painted all of those, and they all turned out about the same, so pretty good. Then I went ahead and painted my German rifles, so the Kar 98s. These turned out pretty good. A little bit more complicated with this ring right here. You can't completely tell, but it's not fully uniform, but since it's so small you can't really tell if there's mess ups there. At a distance you can just see it looks like a metal ring that you'd have on the actual Kar 98, so those turned out nice. Then just a few side things where the Kar 98 with the scope on it. I only had one of these, so just ended up painting it just because I was painting my German rifles. Turned out really nice. Then I went ahead, painted my American Springfield. Snipers turned out really nice in my opinion. And then my most recent paintings were the Mosin Nagants. Here's one with the scope on it. And then I figured, since most Russians wouldn't be carrying around a scope Mosin Nagant, I cut off the scope, and as you can see, you can't really tell that there's a scope there. What's really nice about the paint is it covers up all like the little scars from cutting it off. You might see like a little bit of a bump or something, but you really can't tell, so that's really nice about painting also. And just a comparison to, if you look at this, you're like, oh, that looks just like the previous ones that I was showing you that were painted. This one, the SMLE down here, is a overmolded, so just here's a comparison with the paint and the overmolded. It's a little darker for the overmolded, and you can't scratch this off. That's like the only downside, I'd say, to the painted. Overmolded look basically exactly the same. Only downside to the painted version is you can scratch off the paint if you work hard enough, but there is a solution to that, which I will get into. Well, it might not be a full solution, but at least enough that it's not too bad. It's worth it in the end if you take into price. So I'll get right into what you guys will need. Paint, obviously. So I use the Vallejo, or however you pronounce it. You can find this on Amazon. And then as far as paintbrushes, another important thing, the AIT products. They're the only paintbrushes I've ordered, but ever since using them, they're really good, very high quality, and they're the very fine tipped. very small, perfect for painting on small brick arms. And the special thing about these ones are they're right here, pure Russian red sable. So apparently the Russian weasel has a special quality to its hair that once it gets wet or with paint on it, it like comes together into a really fine tip, and I found it actually does that, so it's really nice and I'd recommend it. So this kit that came with 7 paintbrushes plus this paint was about $30, so it's a pretty decent price for what you're getting. You could probably find just one paintbrush for a lot cheaper. The paint itself was about $6 maybe. It's not too much paint, but if you think about it, you're only really using a drop at a time for each gun, so it's not too much, not too bad. Paintbrushes, and as far as painting, I recommend I use just a bottle cap. If you want to be fancier, you could use like any sort of mixing thing, paint holder, but for the amount of paint that you use to paint these brick arms, I find that just a bottle cap is enough. You're basically just putting a drop of paint on it, so you don't need really anything bigger than this. So that's what you need. I recommend some sort of stand or gun holder. That's what this thing. I use some of my older bricks just so I didn't want to ruin newer ones in case paint dripped on it. So stand, paint, brushes, paint holder. And the good thing about paint, this paint is a lot of times I would overpaint in certain areas. You can just take a toothpick, scratch off the spots that you overpainted. So toothpick is good to have handy, and also you could just wipe off if you overpaint. You could either wipe it off right when you overpainted, or if you notice it later, you could just scratch it off with a toothpick or your nails. And paper towel is always good to have. And so, and then the gun itself, don't forget that. Today I'll be painting some SMLEs just because I already painted all my M1 Grands and all my Kar 98s, all those, and now I'm getting to my British rifles, so get right into painting. I won't paint all of these in front of you, I'll probably just do one for starting. So those are the rifles that need to be painted. Before you paint them, and before you use a brush for the first time, make sure you clean out the brush for the first time, and before you paint on the guns, wash them off so you don't have like the oils from your hands on them that might mess up the paint a little bit. So with that, I think I'll get right into painting for you guys, give you kind of a demonstration, I guess. So I'll move some stuff out of the way, get ready for that. Go ahead. So just a little bit, take a quick transition, and then I'll get right into the painting. So go ahead and get everything ready for you guys. Okay guys, I got everything in position ready to show you a demonstration. Just before that, I forgot to mention this stuff. This is also from Velajo or whatever. Is a varnish. This is another thing that you'd need, or I guess you don't need it, but highly recommend it. It is just a coating that you put on after you put the initial paint coloring. This goes on clear. It basically is just a protective coating just to prevent scratching from happening super easily. So I'll get more into talking about that in a little bit. Got the overmolded here just for something to know where to paint. Highly recommend you have either just like a overmolded next to you or a picture of the actual gun so you know where you're gonna paint ahead of time. It's always good to know that. So as far as putting the paint down, I highly recommend just a little bit, just like a drop of paint. if you put too much down at a time, it will dry up pretty fast, and then it'll just won't go on good. You'll have to it'll end up just wasting the paint, and if you do try to put it on, it'll just be really clumpy, so you don't want that. Just wet the brush, and if you look closely, it's made a pretty nice fine tip. So I guess that Russian red sable hair is, I was pretty surprised. It's actually pretty good. So I usually start by holding the barrel and then starting with the loading area, painting that first, just because the barrel itself gives you a pretty decent area to hold on to. I recommend not putting too much paint on at a time, just because if there's more paint on, there's more of a chance for an error to be made. So you want to try to go for as little possibility for errors as possible. Just saves you time later on, and I feel like it will look better in the end if you do it right the first time. So already you can see these fine tip brushes make it really a lot easier for getting into the small cracks, and just this little the little bolt area for loading, it's a lot more complicated with you can see I kind of overpainted there. Somewhat overpainted around the bolt spot. That's okay, because you can just go back with the toothpick, scratch that off later, and it will still look just as good. And just after painting this a little bit, you can really tell that it's looking way better than just having the regular brown, and it doesn't take too much concentration since I'm talking to you guys and doing it at the same time, and it's not too difficult. Already looks a lot better than the original. And in certain areas you can kind of see, I'm not sure if you can see quite as well, but it gets a little patchy, it doesn't show through, so I highly recommend that you put 2 coats of paint on, of at least the gunmetal paint, 2 coats of the gunmetal, and then after that, for the varnish, the protective coating, I'd recommend at least 1 coat of the protecting paint. Okay, sorry guys for that brief kind of just blip right there. I was painting, and then all of a sudden my power went out in my house, and so I stopped the recording then, but since it was already like 5 minutes in, I didn't want to scrap that, so I cut off that end spot where the power went out, and so I'm just going to continue where I left off. Basically just painted the majority of this front part of the gun. Like I said earlier, I try to start by holding the barrel of the gun and then painting all these sections, and then usually with the stand I'll set it on the stand and then have that be steady so I can then paint off the stand. But since I'm only painting one gun for you guys, I'll just hold it. And I probably could have put more paint down. Power went out for like, I don't know, 4 hours maybe. So I probably need some more paint. So can't completely remember what I said to you earlier, but I would definitely put 2 coats of the gunmetal color paint on, and then afterwards usually let it take, well, I think it dries pretty fast, but I usually give it at least half a day to dry, sometimes just overnight, just to be safe. But you could experiment with that yourself, but I would recommend at least half a day. That's what I do sometimes if I want to get the 2 coats in just one day. I'll do 1 coat in the morning, and then towards the end of the day I will do 1 final coat. But that's just with the gunmetal paint. As far as the varnish goes, the protective coating, I usually only put 1 coat of this on, and then I let the varnish protective coating sit overnight to cure. And I'd say, depending on how much use the thing you're painting, or how much use, or like what part of the gun you're painting, I'd recommend multiple coats of the varnish if you're doing like the handle where the minifigure hand would constantly rub on that. I feel like that would need more protection from scratching, because it would be constantly being rubbed against. So that's about done for this. This SMLE is pretty much done, I'd say. So with that interruption, it doesn't take very long, maybe 5 minutes at the very most, painting each individual rifle, and looks basically just as good as the overmolded one, as you can see. And I probably could have added a little bit more detail, but since that interruption happened, I can't really remember what I did earlier. I'm just trying to finish this up for you guys. So that's basically it. Then I'd usually just set it on my stand to let it dry, and then usually at a time I've got a stand for up to 8 guns. That's what I usually do, 8 in one, usually 8 for a week, I guess, and then I kind of space out the different times. I guess for the weekend I'd usually do 8, just first day do 2 coats, and then the next day do the varnish, and that works out pretty well. Otherwise, during the week I usually don't have quite as much time, so just spread out the 8 over the whole week. So I guess it's for you to decide how you're gonna space it out, or how many you want to do at a time. I feel like I could get way more done, but I only made 1 stand, so I basically just limited myself to 8 week or weekend. So with that, I don't want to bore you guys just doing a bunch, all 8 over the video, but whenever I get this out, you'll probably see all the finished products of the SMLEs in one of my upcoming videos, probably in a Castle update video. You'll see those. I usually do that, or if you follow my Instagram ASpengler channel, I've been posting a lot of pictures of my painted guns. But with that, as far as tutorial videos, I'll probably have water slide decal tutorial coming up at some point, and maybe like a tree tutorial. I have a few other ideas, but we'll see how this video goes. So with that, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, subscribe. Shoutouts always help the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.